Who here this morning is familiar with the system named Trafodata? Yeah, me neither. I had to look it up. Well, it's a computer system that reads roadside traffic data and converts it into reports that traffic engineers can use. According to Huffington Post, when the two developers of this system, who were in high school at the time, first tried to demonstrate it and sell the system, it didn't even work. But these two men today admit that what they learned from that was vital to their another project they had just a few years later. Bill Gates and Paul Allen did fairly well with their other project, Microsoft. Who wouldn't give up trying to be a professional writer after having your first book rejected by 30 publishers? 30. He literally threw his first book into the trash. Now his wife encouraged him to pull it back out and continue working on it. Now, Stephen King's books have sold over 350 million copies. Around this part of the country, we know how things worked out for a local writer-cartoonist who was once fired for being not creative enough. According to Entrepreneur.com, Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse cartoons were rejected because they were deemed too scary for women. Yeah. And the Three Little Pigs was rejected because it only had 4 characters. But he persisted. And the world has benefited from his cartoons, animations, movies, and of course, theme parks. Then there was a young man born in Cincinnati, Ohio. He applied to the University of Southern California to study filmmaking. Application rejected. He applied again. Rejected again. Many years later, in 1994, USC gave an honorary degree to him. His name is Steven Spielberg. An Eagle Scout, he was allowed to use, because his father's still camera was broken, he was given permission to use his father's 8mm movie camera to earn the photography merit badge. The rest is history. But it gets better. 2 years after receiving his honorary degree from USC, he became a trustee of the university. Underscoring the point that official degrees from universities are not required to do something successfully. On July 16, 2003, 12 Cuban migrants attempted to cross the Strait of Florida on a boat fashioned out of a 1951 Chevy pickup truck. They got within 40 miles of Florida before the Coast Guard found them. A propeller was attached to the drive shaft of the pickup truck, pushing it along at about 8 miles an hour. The truck raft was kept afloat by empty 55-gallon drums attached around it to the bottom as pontoons. Another reason I like this photo is because it has a rather popular color scheme for things around here. Fancy degrees are not needed. Fancy degrees in filmmaking are not needed to make history. The professionals don't have all the answers. And of course, every April we are reminded that the Titanic was built by professionals and the Ark was built by amateurs. It reminds us that we need to consider what's important. We looked at what 2 weeks ago. Last Sunday, while I was at annual conference, Amanda did a wonderful job with the message looking at why. Today, we look at who. The prophet Samuel had the question who on his mind when God called him to find and anoint Saul's successor, the next king of Israel. God was sending him to Jesse in the town of Bethlehem, saying he had chosen one of Jesse's sons to be the next king. Samuel initially was afraid to go, thinking if Saul heard about this, Saul would have him killed. But God provided a plan, and we pick up the story when Jesse and his sons come to Samuel. They're in Bethlehem in the 16th chapter, beginning with the 6th verse. When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, the Lord has not chosen this one either. Jesse then had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, nor has the Lord chosen this one. Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, the Lord has not chosen these. So he asked Jesse, are these all the sons you have? There is still the youngest, Jesse answered. He is tending the sheep. Samuel said, send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives. So he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, rise and anoint him. This is the one. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Samuel then went to Ramah. The word of the Lord. A key takeaway for us today is that Samuel put his questions and fears aside. He set aside looking at things in human terms, looking at the superficial, looking at what was lacking, looking at things like the professionals might have, and looking at a small physical stature. Like Bill Gates, Paul Allen, Stephen King, Walt Disney, and Steven Spielberg, young David had something in his heart bigger than anything else. As Pastor Antonio Settles said at annual conference, he had a small slingshot and a big God. Small can be perfect for what's needed. Whether it's on a battlefield against a Palestinian giant or here in Missouri, fighting spiritual battles and helping those in need here. 70% of United Methodist churches worship less than 100 people. 7 of the 9 pastors in my course of study this past winter served churches with 55 or fewer in worship. This is pretty much what most United Methodist churches look like. What are the few large churches trying to do now? They're trying to get small. I don't mean they're locking the doors. I mean they're trying to become small group based because people don't know everybody in those churches. They're disconnected. They're trying to adapt because society has changed. You know, the largest single 10-year age group is 25 to 34. And studies indicate that millennials are less interested in the programs that helped those few larger churches grow, and they're more interested in hands-on, face-to-face, making a difference ministry. And that's where the small church, just like Woods Chapel, is perfectly suited. The small church can easily start a face-to-face making a difference ministry, easily change it as needed, or move to something different. Nimble is the word often used. The small church is nimble. A wise pastor said at annual conference, "For a church to try a ministry that doesn't work is not a failure. The only failure is failing to try." Failure could have been the final score for another author. Entrepreneur.com tells us of another author who struggled to write a novel that publishing companies would call pure rubbish and rejected several times. 27 rejections to be exact. But he didn't listen to the naysayers. One night he ran into an old friend who had recently become an editor at a publishing company. Despite those 27 rejections, he proceeded forward. Gilius, I believe, was his last name. But most people today know him by his pen name that he used using his middle name, Dr. Seuss. Of over 600 million copies of books written by Dr. Seuss, including The Cat in the Hat, Green Eggs and Ham, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. One was titled Horton Hears a Who, which takes us to Whoville. Now, isn't this a perfect book on a message titled Who? Yeah. Well, Horton is made fun of and harassed by other animals for believing in something they couldn't see or hear. Sound familiar? Whoville is, of course, full of whos. But they were asking someone else, Horton, to protect them. Far too many churches are like that. Thankfully, Woods Chapel has done a wonderful job of stepping up to the plate and providing help in the community here and through apportionments and ministry worldwide. 3 weeks ago, our closing hymn was "Here I Am, Lord," where the lyrics come from the book of Isaiah with the Lord asking, "Whom shall I send and who will go for us?" Who will reach out to those in need in Puerto Rico? With 2 years more of no electricity, as Larry mentioned. Who will reach out to help those in Mozambique, Haiti, water, and around the world? Well, we are. You and me. And other Methodist congregations in the Missouri Conference through our giving. But to reach out to people in our immediate local mission field, those living within an 8 to 10 mile radius of where we are right now. Now that's over 78 square miles. Who will do that? Food insecurity is not something limited to Mozambique or lack of water. People in Lafayette County with food insecurity number over 4,000. People in Johnson County with food insecurity number over 8,000. Who will help? Jesus tells us the harvest is plentiful and the workers are few. Who do we see can do this? Let's look. Who do we find? We can give thanks for all the ministry and help Woods Chapel has provided in the past and be thankful for the opportunities in the future. Let's pray. Lord, you have given us the Holy Bible, where throughout it tells that physical size does not matter when it comes to ministry and helping people. Give us the courage that when we look around to see who should do something, that we can continue to say, "Here I am, send me." And all of God's people said, Amen.